Karen kicked a disabled girl off the school bus, making her fall and hit her head. The crying child's blood dripped onto the pavement. Karen didn't know the girl's father was a Navy SEAL who just returned from deployment. His revenge would teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Before watching full stories, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Get off the bus now. You're making everyone late. The shrill voice cut through the afternoon air as I pulled up to the school bus stop. I had just returned from a 3-month deployment overseas yesterday and wanted to surprise my daughter Emma by picking her up from the bus stop myself. What I saw made my blood freeze. A blonde woman in designer sunglasses was standing at the bus door, blocking my 12-year-old daughter's wheelchair from exiting properly. Emma, born with cerebral palsy, was struggling to navigate the bus lift while this stranger berated her. "You're taking too long. My daughter has piano lessons," the woman shouted, reaching over and hitting the lift control button before Emma was secured. I leaped from my car as the lift jerked and my precious Emma slipped from her wheelchair, tumbling to the hard concrete below. Her small body hit the ground with a sickening thud, her head striking the pavement. "Emma!" I screamed, sprinting toward my fallen daughter as blood began to seep from a gash on her forehead. Her specially designed glasses lay shattered beside her. But today was different. As I watched from our porch, I noticed the bus stopping at our designated spot at the end of the street. I could see Lily waiting there with Mrs. Martinez, our neighbor who helps take her to the bus stop when I'm deployed. Something seemed off. The bus door opened, but instead of Mr. Johnson, a woman with a tight blonde ponytail and oversized sunglasses stepped out. I put down my coffee and walked closer, something in my gut telling me to pay attention. As I got within earshot, I could hear the woman's shrill voice carrying through the morning air. "This is ridiculous. It takes too long to load and unload these wheelchairs. We're running late because of this." I quickened my pace, my combat boots hardly making a sound on the pavement, a habit from years of stealth operations as a Navy SEAL. "Excuse me?" Mrs. Martinez was saying, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Lily has every right to take this bus. There's a schedule for a reason and the lift only takes a minute." The woman, whom I would later learn was Patricia Donovan from the local homeowners association, crossed her arms across her designer jacket. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped impatiently against her arm. "Listen, I'm doing everyone a favor by volunteering as a bus monitor today, and I'm telling you this is inefficient. My daughter Brittany is going to be late for her advanced placement test, and the other kids have schedules too." I saw Lily's face fall, the hurt in her eyes cutting through me like a knife. A teenage girl with the same blonde hair as Patricia peeked out from the bus window, smirking slightly. "Ma'am," I said, my voice calm but firm as I approached. Years of high-stakes operations had taught me to control my emotions even when my blood was boiling. "That's my daughter you're talking about." Patricia barely glanced at me. "Well, you should make other arrangements. It's inconsiderate to make 20 other students wait for one child. Maybe you could drive her yourself instead of causing problems for everyone else." I stepped closer, standing tall in my civilian clothes, a simple t-shirt that did little to hide the muscle built from years of military training. "I'm James Wilson, Lily's father and a lieutenant in the Navy SEALs. I just returned from deployment, and I'd appreciate it if you'd allow my daughter on her regular bus as required by law." Patricia scoffed, looking me up and down dismissively. "Military or not, rules are rules. I'm the new HOA president, and I'm implementing efficiency protocols for the neighborhood. The bus is already 3 minutes behind schedule. What my daughter has is not a choice, Ms. Donovan. The Americans with Disabilities Act guarantees her right to access this transportation." "Well, I don't see how that's my problem," Patricia snapped. "Maybe you should have thought about logistics before moving to this neighborhood. Our community has standards." By now, several kids were watching from the windows. Lily's eyes were welling with tears and my heart broke for her. I'd faced terrorists and hostage situations with less anger than I felt in that moment. "Lily, honey," I said gently, "let's go home. I'll drive you to school today." As I turned Lily's wheelchair around, Patricia called after us. "Good choice. And you might want to attend the next HOA meeting. We're discussing designated times for special needs activities in common areas. We can't have wheelchairs cluttering up the playground during peak hours." I felt my jaw clench, but I kept walking. This wasn't the time or place. Mrs. Martinez squeezed my arm in solidarity before heading back to her house. Back home, Lily was quiet as I helped her into our adapted minivan. "Daddy," she finally said in a small voice that broke my heart. Am I a burden? I knelt down to her eye level, my throat tight. Emma Wilson, you listen to me. You are the bravest, strongest person I know. Braver than many of the men I've served with. You are never, ever a burden. Some people just haven't learned what real strength looks like. She gave me a small smile, wincing slightly from the bandage on her forehead, and I gently kissed her cheek before closing her door. On the drive to school, I called the principal, Dr. Torres, and explained what happened. His response was immediate and reassuring. Lieutenant Wilson, I'm appalled. Mrs. Donovan has no authority as a bus monitor. We don't even have such a position. She must have bullied her way onto the bus when the regular monitor called in sick. I'll handle this immediately and ensure Lily's transportation rights are protected. After dropping Lily off, I drove straight to the school district's transportation office. The director, a former Army Ranger named Mike Garrett, was equally outraged. James, this is completely unacceptable. The bus driver should never have allowed a self-appointed monitor to make decisions about who rides or doesn't ride. I'll be speaking with him and we'll make sure this doesn't happen again. But I knew this was just the beginning. As I drove home, I remembered Patricia's smug face as my daughter lay bleeding on the ground. The image of Emma's terrified eyes looking up at me from the pavement burned in my mind. My years in the SEALs had taught me strategy and patience. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice and ensuring my daughter and others like her would be treated with dignity and never endangered again. That evening I did my research. Patricia Donovan had indeed recently become HOA president in a special election with historically low turnout. In just 3 months, complaints about her leadership had skyrocketed. She had implemented dozens of new efficiency protocols, from limiting the times children could play outside to dictating what colors people could paint their mailboxes. I also discovered that Patricia's husband was a prominent real estate developer who had been trying to make our diverse, middle-class neighborhood more exclusive, to raise property values. They had moved here just a year ago and immediately started trying to change everything to fit their vision. The next morning, I was stunned to find a violation notice taped to our front door. Unapproved wheelchair ramp modification to front entrance. Must be removed within 7 days or face daily fines. The ramp had been approved by the previous HOA board when we moved in 3 years ago. I had all the documentation. This was harassment, plain and simple. I took a deep breath and remembered my SEAL training. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Rushing in with guns blazing wouldn't help Lily. I needed to be strategic. First, I called Dr. Torres again and asked for the contact information for other parents of children with disabilities in the school. Then I reached out to my old military buddy who now worked as a lawyer specializing in ADA compliance. Over the next week, I quietly gathered information and allies. I learned that Patricia had been systematically targeting not just Lily, but several families in the neighborhood, especially those with special needs children, elderly residents, and minority families. Her efficiency protocols always seemed to impact these households the most. I also discovered that Patricia's husband's development company had recently bought 3 foreclosed properties in our neighborhood, and they stood to make a significant profit if property values increased, which might happen if certain undesirable residents were pressured to leave. The following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the bus incident, I was ready. The monthly HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community center. Patricia had moved these meetings from the usual weekend afternoon to a weeknight, making it difficult for working parents to attend. But tonight would be different. I arrived early with Emma, who insisted on coming despite the 6 stitches still visible on her forehead. I want to see you make things right, Daddy, she said, her expression serious but determined, a small scar forming above her right eyebrow, a permanent reminder of Patricia's cruelty. By 6:45 the community center was packed. Every parent of a child with special needs from Lily's school was there. So were dozens of other neighbors who had faced Patricia's arbitrary rules and fines. Local news vans were parked outside. My lawyer friend had made some calls about potential ADA violations in the community. At exactly 7 o'clock, Patricia walked in, her husband Robert trailing behind her. She faltered momentarily at the sight of the crowd but quickly composed herself and strutted to the front of the room. Well, this is an unexpected turnout, she said, her voice artificially sweet. Let's begin with new business. The board has prepared a comprehensive list of updated community guidelines. Actually, I interrupted, standing up, I believe we should start with old business, specifically, the illegal actions taken by you, Mrs. Donovan, against my daughter and other residents with disabilities. Patricia's face flushed. Lieutenant Wilson, this is hardly the forum for personal grievances. If you have concerns, you can submit them in writing. This isn't just my concern, I replied calmly. And I'm not just speaking as Lily's father today. I nodded to my lawyer friend who stood up. I'm attorney Mark Reynolds, representing the newly formed Fairview Neighborhood Equality Coalition. We have documented evidence of at least 17 violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act in this community, all implemented under Mrs. Donovan's leadership. Another woman stood up, Dr. Sarah Chin, a respected pediatrician from the neighborhood. I'm here representing the families of 7 children with disabilities who have faced discrimination from this HOA. We have cataloged every incident, including last week's school bus situation. Patricia's husband grabbed her arm and whispered something urgently in her ear. She shook him off. This is ridiculous. I've simply been enforcing rules that benefit the majority. We can't cater to every special case. Federal law disagrees with you, I said, my voice still calm but carrying throughout the room. And so do your own HOA bylaws, which state clearly that all residents must have equal access to community amenities and services. I pulled out my phone and played a recording of Patricia's voice from the bus stop. We can't have wheelchairs cluttering up the playground during peak hours. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Patricia's face went from red to white. You recorded me without consent. Florida is a one-party consent state, Mrs. Donovan. And that was in a public place with no expectation of privacy. Mr. Donovan stepped forward, clearly trying to salvage the situation. Perhaps there have been some misunderstandings. We certainly never intended. It's not just about intentions, I cut in. It's about actions. And we have evidence that your development company has been working to pressure certain homeowners to sell by selectively enforcing HOA rules against them. I signaled to Mrs. Martinez, who distributed folders to each board member containing documented evidence of the Donovans' systematic targeting. We've also taken the liberty of filing formal complaints with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and the State Attorney General's office, my lawyer friend added. They're particularly interested in the connection between the HOA's actions and Mr. Donovan's real estate investments. Robert Donovan looked like he might faint. Patricia's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her shock. What do you want? She finally managed to ask. I wheeled Emma forward, the bandage on her head a stark reminder of what happened. My daughter would like to respond to that question. Emma looked up at Patricia, reaching up unconsciously to touch her stitches. I just want to ride the bus with my friends without getting hurt. And I want every kid like me to be able to play in the park and live in this neighborhood without being called a burden or being pushed around by people like you. The room fell silent. Then Mr. Jenkins, our 72-year-old neighbor who had been fined for having a medical alert button installation without prior approval, stood up. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current HOA president and board. Seconded, called out voices from around the room. By the end of the night, Patricia and the board members who had supported her were voted out. The police officer who had been quietly sitting in the back of the room also approached Patricia after the meeting. Mrs. Donovan, I need to speak with you regarding the incident with Emma Wilson. We're investigating charges of reckless endangerment of a minor and potential violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, he stated firmly. Patricia's face turned ashen as she realized that her actions had legal consequences beyond just losing her HOA position. An interim board was established, with Dr. Chin as acting president until formal elections could be held. The Donovans slipped out during the commotion, Patricia being escorted by the police officer while trying to avoid the news cameras that had been tipped off about the meeting. 2 days later, we learned that the State Attorney General's office had opened an investigation into Robert Donovan's business practices. Within a month, the Donovans had quietly put their house on the market and moved away. The new HOA board's first action was to establish an accessibility committee, which Emma proudly joined as its youngest member. The school also implemented a new safety protocol for all students with disabilities, ensuring that what happened to Emma would never happen again. The medical bills from Emma's injury were paid in full by the Donovans as part of a settlement that also included funding for accessibility improvements throughout the neighborhood. As for me, I went back to being just Emma's dad, which has always been the most important mission of my life. The skills I learned as a Navy SEAL served me well, but it was Emma's courage, even with her scars still healing, that truly inspired our neighborhood to stand up against injustice. Sometimes the strongest warriors come in unexpected packages, and the most important battles are fought not on foreign soil, but right in our own communities for the dignity and rights of those we love. Emma's scar might fade with time, but our community's resolve to protect its most vulnerable members never will.